We need to restore fairness and reasonableness in the way we share our wealth, provide health care, use energy and treat the environment, address developing world poverty, and aim for an enlightened security by strengthening our moral foundation.
Doctor, father, Navy captain, Democrat. Daniel Freilich is running for the U.S. Senate. Born in New York City, Daniel received his bachelor's degree from Cornell University and his MD from the State University of New York. After serving 2 years in the Navy aboard the USS Coronado and fleet surgeon for Commander 3rd Fleet, Daniel moved to Vermont to complete his residency at UVM. Later, Daniel was an internal medicine attending at Fletcher Allen Healthcare and at Northwestern Medical Center, where he was also an emergency attending. After working in private practice and doing research at UVM, Daniel returned to active duty in the Navy, achieving the rank of captain. He completed a fellowship in infectious diseases, including clinical research, teaching, and training in Africa and South and Central America. Later, Daniel was an internal medicine and infectious disease attending at Naval Medical Center San Diego, then at National Naval Medical Center Bethesda and Walter Reed Army Medical Center in Washington. Daniel did research in tropical diseases, bioterrorism, and trauma medicine at the Naval Medical Research Center in Silver Spring, Maryland, and at Uniformed Services University in Bethesda, where he was Associate Professor of Medicine and Surgery. Daniel is extremely proud of his 5 talented children. Donna Wilder, Dan's significant other, is a civilian blood researcher for the U.S. Army. He was a resident of Westford for 17 years and currently lives in Wilmington, Vermont and Washington, D.C.
There should be equitable pursuit of happiness, and if we don't have that, what kind of a democracy do we have? The question is really one of fairness. And if you don't have fair and reasonable policies, you've lost the cohesiveness of your democracy, and you wonder why you got the polarizing arguments that go on in Congress. Power is only good if you use it for goodness. Do what's right, and if you do what's right, it's going to, by default, you'll get all that personal gain if that's what you need, but do right because it's right. There's no more to it than that. This campaign is based on the 4 E's. The first E is economic equity. And there are 2 major issues that we think need to be fixed. First of all, there has to be universal health care. The only approach that makes sense is a single-payer system. Obviously, from a moral point of view, I do believe that all humans deserve health care, very much like other sort of inalienable rights. People look at this sometimes and say, oh, is that socialized medicine? It's not socialized medicine, it's just health insurance by the government. You still get to go to your own doctor, you still get to choose your own doctor, but the cost savings are enormous. Most estimates, and I think all parties would agree, that a single-payer Medicare, just simple Medicare for all, will save about $300 to $400 billion a year. I mean, it's an astronomical amount of money. Medicare only spends about 2% on administrative costs for the reason I just said. Private insurance companies, 15 to 30%. All right, Canada has a single-payer system. Canada's overall administrative costs, so not just health insurance companies, but doctors and all that, is 17%. In America, the overall is about 1/3, it's 34%. What I am advocating is that taxes be significantly increased on high-income individuals. The consequence of that is to lower taxes on the middle class. I espouse a very significant reformation of our tax system. Number 1, progressive income tax. Number 2, progressivity as well in the capital gains. Thirdly, we should put some progressivity also into the payroll taxes. If you make over $350,000, it should go up 3% for every 150. And eventually, if you make $950,000, it might hit 50%. In the 20th century, it was 90 and 70% for decades during Democratic and Republican administrations. This is not a party thing. In those days, we were Americans, and we felt that if someone is having trouble next door, in the olden days, you helped them out. And now it's, I don't know, there's a general impression of greed. It seems to me that the idea is the way you succeed in life is only through money. And I think there's many ways to succeed, by service and by being a good person. And that doesn't mean you don't want to have a comfortable life, but it should be reasonable. We need to understand in America that the energy and the environmental policies that we're pursuing are a few things. Number one, they are existential threats to the United States. Now, there are some countries that are getting buried in water in the next 10 years, and they're more than existential, the realities for those. But for us, it is an existential threat in terms of the change that it will ensue in terms of the climate and various other things. The second thing, and it's not existential but is real, is it's a national security and it is an economic threat. When we take our national wealth and hand it over to OPEC and the various other oil-producing countries, what it does to our balance of trade, what it does to our national debt, what it does to promoting wars, increasing the likelihood of wars, maintaining a supply line in the Middle East, all this stuff, this costs us hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars. So we need a comprehensive, transformational approach to energy. We need massive urban transit investment in every city in America. We need smart development, we need smart cars, we need smart gasoline, we need smart appliances, we need all these things. How do you do it? The way you do it is the federal government establishes standards and establishes tax incentives and penalties. And through that, you can direct what's happening. And over 20 years, you get off carbon fossil fuels, period. Having spent 13 years in active duty in the US Navy, you can guess that I'm probably not a pacifist, but I believe that military power should be used only as a backup to your moral framework. And if you have a strong moral framework, you're not going to have to use military power very often because people like you. And people are not opposed to what you're doing because you're doing the right thing. And I think if we do the right thing in terms of our own people with economics, tax policy, with health insurance, the environment in the United States and overseas, in terms of combating poverty and illness and misery and all that, I think that gives us an enormous amount of security. You kind of might wonder why the average Vermonter might care about a child with malaria or with TB or with a vaccine-preventable illness in sub-Saharan Africa or where you grew up in Haiti. And it does matter. And it matters for multiple reasons. Again, the political instability, the terrorism that it breeds, the anger that it breeds, that all comes back to us. And in fact, it comes back to a practical pocketbook issue of your taxes. And those taxes are going to these huge defense expenditures and other issues. And by the way, the other point is that the globe has gotten really small. And we know that. West Nile virus sounded like this big exotic thing. And now it's all over the country. And that's just an example. And we know H1N1. So we're a small globe, and we really need to take control of public health throughout the world. The fact is that in 2009, millions and millions of kids are dying of vaccine-preventable illnesses. But this is not necessary. We can fix this, and if we fix this, it's not just doing good and a moral thing, it's an economic issue and it's a national security issue. Because when you have poverty and when you have misery and when you have illiteracy, when you have dirty water and you don't have sanitation, you get angry. And when you get angry, you tend to do things which we don't like, terrorism, and you get involved with other zealous organizations. Countries become antagonistic to us. We therefore have to spend more money on defense, and the circle is kind of obvious.